Hey guys, Felipe here. So as you know, I'm here to keep you up to date with market news and teaching. So in this video, I'm just basically going to be talking about option Greeks again. And if this doesn't make any sense or you might have any questions, feel free to leave me a comment or something, and then we can learn this stuff better together, right? So I'm going to jump right into it, get into the Greeks, right? So the Greeks are extremely important, especially in this market, right? Because statistically, option trading is at a historical all-time high, which can be a red flag, right? Because it means a lot of people are speculating these days. And ultimately, the end of bull markets come with crazy speculation, right? So let's talk about Delta, right? Delta is one of the Greeks, some say, one of the more important Greeks. And basically, delta is commonly used in at least two different contexts to express the amount by which an option changes for a 1 point move in the underlying security, or to describe the equivalent stock position of an entire option portfolio. Delta is a number that ranges between 0 and 1 for calls, -0 or -1 and 0 for puts. Puts deltas are expressed as a negative number to indicate that the put price move is the opposite direction from the underlying security. Deltas of out of the money options are smaller numbers, trending basically towards 0 as the option becomes very far out the money. Conversely, deep in the money calls have a delta approaching 1, basically meaning that option has value, right? While deeply out of the money puts have a delta approaching -1. Again, meaning that put has intrinsic value, right? So that contract has value, or it's above the stock price or under the stock price for the put. The first risk measurement that concerns the option strategist is how much current exposure his option position has as the underlying security moves. This is called the delta. Very important in the options world. The volatility of the underlying security has an effect on delta, because vega and volatility affect delta, right? If the stock is not volatile, then in the money options have a higher delta, and out of the money options have a lower delta. So here we have an example of how delta works, right, and how it's influenced. So we're going to be talking about average delta. So average delta is a little bit difficult to calculate because gamma is not constant, right? With the change of the underlying, gamma changes as well, and then that influences delta, right? So here we have an example. Let's say the stock price is at $60, and then it moves to $61, right? So at that point, initially the call delta, because this is a call, had a delta of a 0.50 and had a gamma of a 0.04. So for every $1 move up in this call, the gamma is going to grow by that. The delta is going to grow by the gamma, right? Which is a 0.04. So it goes from the delta 0.50 to 0.54. And then again, the stock moves from 61 to $62. The delta is going to change by the gamma, right? In this example, the gamma again is a 0.4, 0.04. So that delta is going to change by the gamma. So the delta goes from 0.54 to 0.58. So now how does that influence the value of that option contract? So initially, when the option trader took that contract on, the value of that call was 3.00, right? Or $300 in the option world, right? So the average delta in this case is a 0.52. So now that option's value changes by the option's delta, which is a 0.52. So it goes from 3 to 3.52. So that contract just basically, in this example, gained $52 of value, right, per contract. Again, the stock price moves again by 1 point. So it changes by the average delta, which in this case is a 0.56. So now that option's value, or that call's value, goes from 3.52 to 0.08. So now the value of that call is basically $408 per contract, right? So you kind of see how gamma and delta influence the price of the option, right? So each $1 increase in the stock shows an increase in the stock. Basically shows an increase in the call value about equal to the average delta value between the two stock prices. If the stock were to decline, the delta will get smaller at a decreasing rate, right? Which will be bad for a call. So in the opposite scenario, or an opposite example, where now the stock goes from $60 to $59, in this case, the delta again is influenced by gamma, right? So in this case, we subtract gamma from the delta. So the call's delta starts at 0.50, gamma's 0.04. So in this case, we subtract the delta from, we subtract gamma from the delta. So it ends up being 0.50 minus 0.04. That gives us a 0.46. And then again, the stock goes from $59 to $58. Again, the gamma influences the delta. So the delta in this case, we subtract the 0.04 from it. So it drops down to 0.42. So now how does that influence the value of that call option, right? So again, it starts at 3.00 or $300 per contract. In this case, the average delta is 0.48. So we basically subtract the call value by that average delta, which that gives us 2.52, right? Stock moves from $59 to $58. In this case, again, we subtract from that call value the average delta, which in this case is 0.44. That gives us 2.08. So at this point, that contract or that call, that option call contract has lost basically about $92 in value, right? So when options are far in the money or out of the money, they are either 1 delta or 0 delta. 1 delta meaning it has value because it's pretty much, you know, at the money or in the money, and the 0 delta meaning is out of the money, right? Meaning there's no value there. At the extremes, small changes in the stock price will not cause the delta to change much. When an option is at the money, it's a different story. Its delta can change very quickly. Positive delta indicates a position that is bullish, meaning a long position, right? Delta leans are more of an art than a science and should be used as a hedge only by experienced volatility traders. The rate of change in an option's value relative to the change of the underlying asset price. The derivative of the graph of the option's value in relation to the underlying asset price. So these are basically when you use the charts and you use it to, you know, see the value of the option over time. The equivalent of the underlying asset represented by an option's position, the estimate of the likelihood of an option's expiring in the money. Now let's talk about gamma, right? What is gamma? Gamma is very important to delta because it influences how that delta basically moves, right? So gamma is how fast delta changes with respect to changes in the underlying stock price. It is known that the delta of the call increases as the call moves from out of the money to in the money. So in the money, meaning it has value, right? It's basically at strike or above strike. The gamma is merely a precise measurement of how fast the delta is increasing. For example, XYZ is at 49. Assume the January 50 call has a delta of 0.50 and a gamma of 0.05. If XYZ moves up 1 point, so from 49 to 50, the delta of the call will increase by the amount of the gamma. It will increase from 0.50 to 0.55, right? By the 0.05, which is the gamma. As with the delta, the gamma can also be expressed as a percentage, but in this case, the increase or decrease implies to the delta. Example, again, XYZ is at 49. Assume January 50 call has a delta of 0.50 and a gamma of 0.05. If XYZ moves up 2 points from 49 to 51, the delta of the call will increase by 5%, right? Of the stock move, because the gamma is 0.05 or 5%. So 5% of the stock move is 0.05 times 2, that gives us 0.10. Thus, the delta would increase by 0.10, right? From 0.50 to 0.60, right? So from 0.50 to 0.60. In general, the gamma is at its maximum point when the stock is near the strike of the option. As the stock moves away from the strike in either direction, then the gamma decreases, approaching its maximum value of 0. Conceptually, this means that a deeply in the money or deeply out of the money option has a gamma of nearly 0. Out of the money options display a different relationship between gamma and time remaining. An out of the money option that is about to expire has a very small delta, hence a very small gamma. This gamma influences delta, right? However, if the out of the money option has a significant amount of time remaining, then it will have a larger gamma than the option that is close to expiration, because there's more time for that stock to change, right? Gamma is depending on the volatility of the underlying security as well. At the money options, on less volatile securities, will have higher gammas than similar options on more volatile securities. Long options, whether puts or calls, have a positive gamma, while short options have negative gamma. So negative gamma means that one's position is about to react poorly to price changes in the market. The position will soon be fighting the market. The only way to counter negative gamma is to buy options, not stock. The gamma of the gamma, I know that's a little confusing, is the amount by which the gamma would change when the stock price changes. And important to note is that the gamma of the underlying security itself is 0. That is true because the delta of the underlying, which is always 1, never changes. Hence, the gamma is 0. The gamma is a measurement of the amount of change of the delta. If the delta of the underlying security never changes, the gamma of the underlying security must be 0. The stock option gains value at a faster rate as the stock rises and loses value at a slower rate as the stock falls. This is the effect of gamma, basically. Gamma is the change. Gamma is the rate of change of an option's delta given a change in the underlying security. Again, here we have an example of a gamma, which is similar to the one I kind of shared a moment ago. So gamma is conveniently stated in terms of delta per dollar moves. So basically, this is what influences, for the most part, the value of those option contracts, right? So stocks at 60, delta's at 0.50, gamma is 0.04. Stock moves to $61, 1 point, right? So that delta is going to change by the amount of the gamma. So it goes to 0.54. Stock moves to $62. Delta is again going to be influenced by the amount of the gamma. So it goes to 0.58, right? So the highest gammas are around the at-the-money strike prices, meaning basically the option contract is right there at the stock price of the contract. As expiration draws nearer, the gamma decreases for in the monies and out of the monies, and increases for the at-the-money strikes, right? Meaning the option contract is at strike price, right? Gamma is not constant. In reality, none of these Greeks are. It is basically the rate of change of the options delta given a change in the price of the underlying asset or the stock, right? There exists a trade-off between gamma and theta, theta being time decay, right? The change of the value of the option due to the passage of time. Long options have positive gamma and negative theta. So long options are influenced negatively by theta, right? Meaning they lose value as days go on. Short options have negative gamma and positive theta, meaning short options make money as days go forward due to theta. Positions with greater gamma, whether positive or negative, tend to have greater theta values. Position negative or positive. Likewise, lower absolute values for gamma tend to go hand in hand with lower absolute values for theta. The gamma theta relationship is the most important consideration with many types of strategies. Gamma theta is often the measurement with the greatest influence on the bottom line. So it has the greatest influence whether that contract makes or loses money, right? So here I have a strategy covered call, right? The problem basically with selling a naked call is that it has a limited exposure to the underlying, to basically upside risk, right? A covered call is when calls are sold, so a short position, right? And stock is purchased on a share for share basis to cover the unlimited upside risk of the call. For each call that is sold, 100 shares of the underlying security are bought. There are a few important considerations with the covered call, both when putting on or entering the position and when taking off or exiting the trade. So those are like, option lingo, putting on and taking off. The risk reward implication of implied volatility are important in the trade planning process. Do I want to get paid more to assume more potential risk? It's a question you should be asking. More speculative traders like higher premiums, meaning implied volatility is high. More conservative investment-oriented covered call sellers like low implied risk of low implied volatility. So they prefer lower implied volatility, meaning the option premium is less, right? So that covered call is selling for less. Ultimately, a main focus of covered calls is the option premium, because in this case, you're basically collecting, you're generating income as time moves on. Basically, in this case, theta, time decay is your friend, right? So another question one should be asking is, how fast can it go to zero without the movement hurting me? To determine this, trader must study both theta and delta. So theta and delta are extremely important for covered call strategy. So I got a good quote here. Remember that an event to be a black swan does not have to be rare or just wild. It has to be unexpected. It has to lie outside our tunnel of possibilities. You must be a sucker for it. And that is the black swan, right? So I'm gonna stop my share here. And, thank you guys for joining me. And if I provided any value in any way, feel free to like and subscribe. If you got any questions, shoot me a comment. And like I said, we can learn this stuff better together, right? So I'll see you guys on the next one.